back to my channel and welcome if you're new. My name is Arnesia and today's video is going to be all about how I got started in my career journey in human resources. I graduated from Auburn University with a degree in communication and minor in leadership studies. To be honest, I had no idea what HR was until the end of my senior year. While I was at Auburn, I had dreams of becoming a sports reporter, so I was very interested in finding a career within the sports world. So I became very involved with the athletics department where I was working very closely with the football recruiting. And I was able to share my personal experience with football prospects and share with them more about my college experience, which ultimately would help them decide if Auburn was the place that they wanted to spend the next 4 years outside of, football. With that, I did learn that I did not want to be a sports reporter, nor did I really want to work in the sports world. But I did still have a passion for sharing my personal experience with others and helping them make a decision on, big things. I started to do some research on what types of careers that looks like. And I saw recruiter. And, there are different types of recruiters, but I was focused on becoming a corporate recruiter. I wanted to stay in the corporate world. So I started to apply for different recruiter roles as well as rotational programs. And I was starting to get interviews every week. But there was something that I didn't think about, which was where I wanted to live after I graduated from college. So ultimately, I decided on Dallas. So I started to apply to roles in Dallas. And I eventually started to, interview at different companies in Dallas. And I accepted a role as a recruiter before I even graduated from school. So I graduated college in December of 2018 and my first day of work in Dallas was in January of 2019. So it's a very quick turnaround for me. And I'm not going to go into detail about my experience of moving to Dallas right after I graduated, but if you're interested in that, let me know. So my first job in Dallas, I guess you can say that I really enjoyed it because it wasn't very time consuming. I was able to stick to my 8 hours a day and I never felt like I needed to bring home work with me. So in this job, I was a RPO recruiter, which means that I was recruiting for a company that I didn't work directly for. In this role, I would call candidates and I would screen them, which means that I would ask them basic questions. And if they qualified for the role, then I would go ahead and schedule for them to meet with the hiring manager. This role was very simple and I only had to do a little bit of sourcing, which means that I would go on LinkedIn or any other platforms and search for candidates that may qualify for the role. In this role, I did start working from home in 2020, but due to the pandemic in May of 2020, I did get furloughed, so my career search started again. So I started to apply to different jobs and I started working at a tech company in a slightly different role as a recruiting coordinator. So since this was my first time working at a tech company, I quickly saw the difference between working at a traditional company versus a tech company. For example, at my first company, my PTO and sick time had to be accrued versus at this tech company, my PTO and sick time was unlimited. Also at my traditional company, I had to wait a certain time period in order to be eligible for different perks such as 401k versus at this tech company, I got 401k as well as a 401k match from the company. So this was a slightly different position, but my experience as a recruiter did help me a lot in this role because I had experience seeing the end-to-end process. But being a recruiting coordinator at this position, I was able to get more insight on what actually happens from the very beginning of the recruiting process to the very end of the process. In this role, I was the recruiting coordinator for a couple of high volume departments. So a lot of my time was spent scheduling interviews. We had like a corporate side and then we had the more high volume side. So until the end of my career at this company, that's when they started to bring in more recruiting coordinators, but a lot of the time I was kind of on my own. With that being said, this role was very exhausting. It was time consuming and honestly, I felt like I was being punished for being good at what I did. But I was able to learn from it. I was able to learn more about HR as well as monitoring background checks and initiating background checks. I really didn't foresee the candidates all the way through their process because the recruiter, I believe, was more hands-on with the onboarding. This was the first time I had to quit a job and taking myself out of a situation that was damaging to my mental health. So I was very proud of myself for leaving this role and sticking up for myself. And it took a lot to do that, but ultimately I did it. And I ended up at the company that I'm at right now. Currently, I'm still a recruiting coordinator at a tech company, but in this role, it is quite different than my previous recruiting coordinator position. In this role, I wear a lot of different hats and I'm very involved from the start to the finish of the process. So in my current position, I support 2 different departments and the hiring managers are very involved with their recruiting process. Whereas at different companies, it's slightly different. You have the more traditional recruiter there, which we do have those service models, but the ones that I support is more of a self-service type model. So I do work with a lot of different hiring managers, and basically the hiring manager will review resumes and then they'll reach out to me when they're ready to meet with a candidate. Once they let me know the logistics of the interview, I'll reach out to the candidates and schedule what needs to be scheduled. I'm scheduling interviews as well as onboarding candidates. So when a final candidate is identified, I will draft the offer document and send it to that candidate for them to sign. Once they sign that offer document, I'll begin the onboarding process, which includes monitoring their background check, making sure that they complete their paperwork, and just getting ready for them to start and making sure that they're on track to start. On top of that, I am involved with a number of different side projects, which I find very interesting because I'm able to see what other departments are doing, as well as partner with more senior individuals and learn from them. So in this role, like I said, I do wear a lot of different hats, but I'm able to learn something new every single day. I learn different laws that are required in the US as well as internationally. And there's so much in the world of HR that you may not know. And I have been exposed to a lot of that. So that's all for today's video about my career journey in human resources. I do have another video that will be coming out next Thursday, and it will be 5 tips on working in HR as a recruiting coordinator. So if you're interested in that video, make sure that you are subscribed and you have your post notifications turned on. If you have any other questions for me, please leave me a comment down below and I'll see y'all in my next video. Bye.